Madam President, when the forces of fascism and Nazism were appeased and accommodated 100 years ago, it led to the Second World War. The Gaza genocide illustrates the consequences of offering impunity to extremist regimes. Unless Hindutva fascism is opposed, unless the sense of impunity of the BJP RSS is ended, unless the Indian Muslims are protected against genocide, and unless the Kashmiri dispute is peacefully solved, wider violence and conflict in South Asia is a real and present danger. And what happens in South Asia will not remain in South Asia. 2 days ago, Pakistan's Foreign Minister informed the Security Council, as well as the Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly, of India's campaign of targeted assassinations in Pakistan. This extraterritorial state terrorism is not limited to Pakistan. It has been extended to targeted killings of political opponents in Canada and attempted in the United States, and probably in other countries. The Washington Post reported that Prime Minister Modi last week told his cheering supporters, and I quote, "Today, even India's enemies know this is Modi. This is the new India. This new India comes into your home and kills you," unquote. Madam President, the situation in occupied Jammu and Kashmir will never be normal until the people of Jammu and Kashmir are allowed to exercise their right to self-determination through a plebiscite held under the UN auspices as called for by several Security Council resolutions and accepted by India. The Jammu and Kashmir dispute is an open wound which can once again trigger a disastrous conflict between Pakistan and India. It needs to be resolved urgently in accordance with the resolutions of the Security Council and the wishes of the Kashmiri people. Madam President, far from seeking a peaceful resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute, the extremist BJP RSS government has resorted to belligerence and aggression against Pakistan. The Defense Minister of India has threatened to take over Pakistan-administered Jammu and Kashmir. The Army Chief has threatened to cross the line of control. India is accumulating new and advanced weapon systems, some say on the pretext of containing China, but which are almost all deployed against Pakistan. India's armed forces have adopted dangerous doctrines, cold start to launch a surprise attack against Pakistan, and another contemplating, and I quote, a limited war under the nuclear overhang, unquote. To coerce Pakistan and disrupt the China-Pakistan economic corridor, India is financing and sponsoring terrorist groups, especially the TTP and the BLA, to conduct attacks in Pakistan across our western borders. Pakistan has circulated to the United Nations a detailed dossier with concrete evidence of over 2,400 crimes committed by named Indian officials in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Madam President, the massive violation of human rights in Jammu and Kashmir has been documented in 2 reports issued by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, as well as by several of the Human Rights Council's special rapporteurs. India has consistently denied the requests for access to occupied Jammu and Kashmir to the High Commissioner as well as to the special rapporteurs. And yet India falsely claims that the situation is normal in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Thousands of other mosques and Muslim religious sites across India are under threat. We urge the Secretary General to implement the plan of action for the protection of religious sites. Madam President, India's Christian minority has not been spared either. The organization Genocide Watch says that in January 2023 in Manipur, 249 churches were destroyed within 36 hours. In 2023, there were 525 attacks against Christians in India. The Dalits face similar discrimination and violence, and hate against the Sikhs is rising again. Madam President, Hindutva extremism has turbocharged the repression of the people of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. After the unilateral and illegal measures taken on 5 August 2019 to annex Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, India has deployed 900,000 troops to impose what it ominously calls a final solution for Kashmir. The Indian occupation is brutal and pervasive. All the pro-freedom Hurriyat leaders remain incarcerated. Several have died in suspicious circumstances in Indian custody. Over 13,000 young Kashmiri men have been abducted and many of them tortured. Hundreds of innocent Kashmiris are extrajudicially killed each year with impunity in fake encounters and cordon and search operations. Cow vigilantes lynch, kill, and assault Muslims with official approbation. Muslim men are persecuted for so-called, I quote, love jihad, unquote, to prevent them marrying Hindu women. Extremist Hindu groups have expressly called for genocide against Muslims. The organization Genocide Watch has warned of the possibility of genocide of Muslims in India as well as in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And just last week, Prime Minister Modi himself fueled the hate and violence against Muslims, calling them infiltrators who would be taking the wealth of Hindu men and women. An official campaign to eliminate India's rich Islamic heritage is part of the Hindutva campaign. History textbooks are being rewritten to eliminate references to India's Muslim rulers and its glorious period of Islamic rule. Muslim place names are being replaced by Hindu names. The Indian Supreme Court not only failed to punish those who destroyed the historic Babri Mosque, but allowed them also to build the Ram temple on the site of the destroyed mosque. This temple was inaugurated with much fanfare by Prime Minister Modi earlier this year. Days later, the 500-year-old Akhunji Mosque in Delhi was destroyed with apparent official sanction. Hindu groups are seeking to transform other mosques, such as the one in Varanasi, into Hindu temples. One of its members assassinated Mahatma Gandhi. A shrine has been built for the assassin. Indeed, over the past 50 years, since it was banned as a terrorist organization, The RSS has paved the way for the BJP's path to power with violence and hate against Muslims. This was clearly manifested in a series of pogroms. In 1992, when the RSS-led militants destroyed the historic Babri Mosque in Ayodhya and killed over 1,000 Muslims in Ayodhya and Bombay. In 2002, when over 2,000 Muslim men, women, and children were killed mercilessly in Gujarat, where Mr. Modi was the chief minister. The BBC commentary on this pogrom was banned, and the BBC was investigated by the Indian government for tax evasion. In April 2020, scores of Muslims were killed with impunity and official complicity in front of the eyes of the world in New Delhi. Madam President, the repression of Muslims and Christians is now systematic and pervasive in India. A citizenship law and national registry list is designed to exclude Muslims from citizenship and to intern or expel them eventually. Protests against these discriminatory laws have been brutally suppressed. Madam President, the world cannot but be deeply concerned at the officially sanctioned manifestations of Islamophobia in India. Since the BJP-RSS government assumed office in 2014, hate, oppression, and violence against India's 200 million Muslims and other minorities, Christians and lower caste Dalits, have become rampant and systematic, fueled by the ideology of Hindutva. This ideology, inspired by and born a century ago contemporaneously with European fascism, was explicitly expressed by Golwalkar in one of the early proponents of this ideology in the following words, and I quote, "The foreign races of Hindustan must adopt Hindu culture and language and entertain no ideas but those of the glorification of Hindu race and culture, and may only stay in the country wholly subordinated to the Hindu nation, claiming nothing, not even citizens' rights," unquote. This ideology, Madam President, is being systematically implemented today in Modi's India. It is led by the governing BJP's mother organization, the RSS, which has a dedicated militia of 600,000 fanatical volunteers.